everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healing from Within with me, your host, Keryn Rose. Today, I want to talk love languages. The art of communication has innately flowed from me. Sometimes people will say that, I talk a bit too much. Talking has been a big part of who I am. But other forms of communication for me have been through my music, particularly in my youth, as we say. Look, when I discovered this idea of love languages, it made so much sense to me. It was created by a man called Dr. Gary Chapman. Now, Dr. Gary Chapman is a well-known marriage counsellor and a director of marriage seminars. This particular book, known as The 5 Love Languages, is one of his most popular titles. And he has sold, according to his website, over 20 million copies. And it's been on the New York Times bestsellers list since 2007. It is a compilation of many sessions he has had in marriage counseling. And he came up with this idea that there were typically 5 different ways of communicating or talking love. When I think about it, it's like you might speak French and your partner speaks Italian, and you simply don't really understand where the other person is coming from. This idea of 5 love languages simply, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't outline, it tells you how you show your love for those that are special to you. So, for example, these 5 love languages, if you think of the language as the way in which you communicate, your love language is going to tell you your innate language of love. Now, in no particular order, acts of service is a love language. Another one is the receiving of gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. These are the 5 love languages that Dr. Chapman was able to see in amongst all of and these are thousands of counseling sessions that he had done. He thought, right, people will fall into one of these 5 groups as a primary language. I believe that everybody has, to a varying degree, a little bit of each. Acts of service are for people whose actions speak louder than their words. I can clearly remember, to the point where I can see where I was standing in the kitchen, when I heard my father say to my mother, "Well, of course I love you, I'm making the kids' lunches." Now, for me, I'm just thinking, really? That's how you do it? But from where I sit now and how I have started to see my father over the past few years, absolutely, he continues to be a man of service, and that is how he shows others his love for them. It didn't make sense to me back when I heard it, and I don't think that it made sense to my mother either. But that was my father showing his love to my mother. It was through acts of service. The love language known as receiving gifts are for people that in the receiving of a heartfelt gift, it's what makes them feel most loved. Quality time is a language about giving the other person or the other people your undivided attention. Words of affirmation as a love language. This language uses words to affirm other people and the importance of them to you. The language of physical touch, to this particular person who has this as their primary love language, nothing speaks more deeply than appropriate physical touch. Now, I'd love you, as I'm talking through this, feel free to grab a pen and start thinking about, if I was to ask you, what do you feel your primary love language is? I reckon that you'd get it pretty spot on. I really, really do. When we talk about love languages, and there's a wonderful plethora of information on Dr. Gary Chapman's website. The website is actually called 5lovelanguages.com, and I'll put the link in the show notes below. They go through the different types of love languages required for romantic relationships, for family relationships, for friendships, and for the workplace. And as I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I loved the fact that there's been an acknowledgement of, okay, when you are in the workplace, chances are you're going to be operating differently. So to understand what your primary language is for connecting with others, because that environment of work is different to being at home. And when you're at home, the romantic space between you and your partner is going to be different to the love being shared between you and your family members. The same between you and your friends. We're complex. We're complex creatures. And to acknowledge that we flow with the environment that we're in, and innately we will have strengths that will come out in a workplace versus the home. Now, on the 5lovelanguages.com website, there are quizzes that you can take that help you through the answering of questions, help you pinpoint what your primary language is. I can remember when my children were teenagers and they were entering the space of romantic relationships. I can remember saying to them, hey, look, go onto the website with your partner and do the quiz and find out what your partner's love language is. And I go back to my parents' relationship. My father absolutely was an active service type of guy. My mother's primary love language, I feel, would have been physical touch. Now, when I look back, my father wasn't a very physical-based person. So was that sending a message to my mother that, hey, you're not loved? Which wasn't the fact. But this is when if you're not singing off that same hymn sheet, if you don't appreciate the language that your partner or your children or your work colleagues are speaking, you may get the wrong information. And that would be so sad. You may really be missing out on something. So I encourage you to look into what is your love language, what is your primary love language. When you do the test, you can have access to percentages of the 5 as how they relate to you. I truly believe that we all carry, to a certain degree, some weight in each one of these. I did do a quiz before I got onto doing this website. I wanted to see, okay, has my love language shifted since moving out of my marriage, leaving my marriage, becoming a single person? And the answer is no. My primary love language is still physical touch. And living with myself, I've absolutely learnt to hug myself. And I'm also very conscious of the benefit of me keeping up contact with other human beings outside my home. So, watch out, if I meet you on the street, I might come and grab a hug, because I'm very much a person that loves hugs. But when it comes to the actions you can take for each one of these love languages, if your primary love language is words of affirmation, you can do things like send an unexpected note, or a text, or a card. So think of your partner. Okay, so let's look at how do you communicate with a person that is very dear to you and has a primary love language of words of affirmation. So the actions you can take are send them an unexpected note, or a text, or a card. I'm still old school and love sending somebody a card for simply no reason other than I'm thinking of you. If your extra special person has a primary love language of physical touch, well, things like hugs, a little kiss, a holding of hands, it's that showing of physical affection often makes them feel loved. And this is what the love language is all about. It's being made to feel loved. If the primary love language of your special other is receiving of gifts, then giving thoughtful gifts and gestures expresses your love in a way that they feel deeply. They really resonate with it. If your special other has a primary love language of quality time, create special moments together. And all of this does not have to cost a lot of money. We're talking actions here. So to take a walk, or to pack a picnic and go and sit down at the beach. If you want to really notch up some brownie points, organize a weekend getaway. Remember, we're looking at the actions that are going to send the message of you mean something to me. The acts of service, thanks to my gorgeous dad, doing chores, doing tasks in the home, particularly if you can do them together. But it's that, I can still see my father. I was visiting on the weekend and he got up from the table to go and put the washing in the dryer. Now, sadly, he's very limited in his physical movement, but he and his walker can get to the laundry and puts the washing into the dryer, and that's what he did. It didn't matter how long it took him. That was his way of showing his wife how much he loves her. So acts of service is going out of your way to help alleviate their workload, but again, it's infused with this idea of this is me showing you how much I love you. So love languages, huge, absolutely huge, because it's you saying to the other person through these actions how much they mean to you. And absolutely start young. Without me knowing my children's love languages when they were little, I would be that mother that put written notes in their lunchbox. Why not? If it embarrassed them, well, yes, I was that mother that embarrassed them. But for me, being their mum, sending them a little note to say, hey, love you, it meant the world to me, and it let them know that I was thinking of them. So how do you show your affection? How do you show your depth of caring? How do you show your love to those that are special? And do you know their love language? My father making the sandwiches as his showing of love to my mother, I don't think was received by my mother as an act of showing love. It was seen as he's making sandwiches. She wasn't receiving the energy of the message that he was sending. And oh my goodness, how many of us do that? Do you know the love language of that special other person in your life? And if you don't, please go to 5lovelanguages.com and take the quiz. Communication is everything. Words may not carry the weight you want them to. To write somebody a message in a card may not carry the same depth of message as going for a walk with them. It's precious. Energy, when energy resonates with someone, oh my God, you feel it. When it doesn't resonate, chances are you'll feel that too. So this is an episode of having fun and getting to maybe know a little bit about yourself and what is your primary love language. Getting to understand your children. Take a quiz on their behalf. If they're old enough, get them to take the quiz. For a child to understand what really resonates with their mum and their dad, I feel goes a long way to forging a deep relationship with each of the parents, and for that matter, the rest of the family. So have fun, folk. I invite you to go and discover what is your primary love language. And I'd love to know if you're willing to share, but if you're going to have to share with anybody, can I invite you to share with your special other, that you both maybe sit down together, do the quiz, and then share. Gosh, I would have loved to have known what my former husband's love language was according to him. I would sit here and say, chances are I feel I know, but it wasn't something that we discussed openly. I certainly encouraged it with my children. They've now both got partners. It's the secret sauce. So, primary love language, what is it? Find out on your partner's behalf as well. And go forth having a lot of fun and enjoying life, knowing that you're speaking a love language that those that need to hear can receive. And as I love to say, until we meet again.
May your day be full of the magic that is you, wherever you may be. Everything in this world is energy, and that includes you. Remember, you are the most important person in your world, and you came into this life with all the tools you will ever need to support your healing from within. Let the healing begin.